Good evening and welcome. Tonight is Monday, September 28th, 2020. This is the regular City Council meeting for the City of St. Peter. We are meeting in person and remotely or electronically. There are 3 members present at the meeting site, and there are 4 members meeting virtually. It is 7:00 p.m. Let's call the meeting to order, and would all please join in the pledge, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everyone should have a copy of the agenda. There's one change to the agenda. We are going to strike under new business, item B. With that change, are there any other changes or additions to the agenda? If not, is there a motion to approve?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
Ed 1, Shannon 2. Any additions or questions now? All in favor of the agenda with that one removal item signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Agenda is approved. Next, we have the minutes from our September 14th, 2020 meeting. Those minutes appear on pages 5 through 7. Are there any additions, comments on those minutes? Carrie?
Just a small one. I attended in person rather than virtually. I think that was just carried over from the last minutes.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, with that one change of Carrie changing from virtually to in person, or excuse me, the other way around, in person to virtually.
It's virtually in the minutes to in person.
Oh, is that what it is? Because you were gone. You were gone the one time, wasn't that for this one?
No,
Time
I was
before.
here for the
Okay,
last one.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that change, is there a motion to approve?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Okay, Steve 1, Carrie 2. All in favor of the minutes with that one change, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Those minutes are approved. Next, we'll address visitors. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any agenda item? Seeing no one. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the council on any matter whatsoever? Seeing no one, we will move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins in detail on page 8 and concludes with the resolution on page 24, and includes the following budgeted purchases in excess of $10,000. To Chris Engineering for cutting edges replacement for $16,881.38. To RDP Technologies for internal heat tube assembly for $10,791.80. Following license applications: a temporary gambling license to the St. Peter Lions for 600 South 5th Street for October 27, 2020. A chicken keeping permit to Joe and Cassie Flynn at 914 Mank Drive. The following election judges, trainees, and alternates are hereby appointed. There are 32 names there, plus the regular schedule of disbursements for September 10th, 2020 through September 23rd, 2020. Any comments on the consent agenda? Todd?
Mayor, members, I just have one. I want to point out the item under number 2 with the chicken keeping permit. When the council originally approved this ordinance, there is no requirement for this to be approved on consent agenda or a separate action item. The council asked that we bring it to your attention, or the attention of the council at that time, because it wasn't known whether there'd be 5 of these or 500 of them. This happens to be number 5. And so from a staff perspective, because there is no ordinance required, we're unlikely to bring these back to you. If you have a question from time to time, just give us a call, let us know. But it's a permit. It'd be just like a building permit or a dog license, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Continuing to move forward. Unless you want to keep kind of a running track and you want us to bring them forward, we certainly can, but that is not what's part of the ordinance. It was kind of just a special request at that time, Mr. Mayor, members.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments, especially, I guess, on that particular item? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Emily will second.
Ed 1, Emily 2. Now any other questions or comments? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Next, we have unfinished business, which there is none. We will move to new business. And the first item, we have a Broadway Generation Plant Equipment Certificate bid. And Sally is here tonight and moving to the microphone. Take it away, Sally, whenever you get a chance.
Ready, Ed? I am. Okay. Mr. Mayor and City Council, I am here, can you hear me, Ron, do this?
Can everybody hear Sally before we get too far into this? She's just started, but she's moving the microphone closer, so we'll find out here.
Through the mask is tough.
I think we're good.
Okay. So we're here tonight to present the results of the 2020 Broadway Generation Plant Upgrade Equipment Certificate, which appears on the memo on pages 25 and 26 in the amount of $345,000 over 5 years, with a principal payment of $69,000 a year plus interest. The first payment would be due on October 1st of 2021 and would finish on October 1st of 2025. As discussed on August 24th at your council meeting and you approved the upgrades to the Broadway Generation Plant.
Is Sally speaking right now? We cannot hear at all. I can't hear at all.
Looks like her mic is silent.
No?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
All right, do we need to be closer to the computer? Does that help?
Okay, now give it another try.
Can you hear me now?
Now they can.
Okay. Did you hear any of it?
Not a thing. Sorry, you guys were so small, I couldn't see you, not acknowledging you couldn't
I'm
hear.
sorry, you
so
guys.
We'll start over.
We'll start over. Mr. Mayor and City Council, I'm here tonight to present the results of the 2020 Broadway Generation Plant upgrade, the equipment certificate. The memo begins on pages 25 and 26, and the amount of the equipment certificate is $345,000 over 5 years. Principal payments are $69,000 a year, plus interest for 5 years. The first payment will be due on October 1st, 2021, and will finish on October 1st, 2025. You discussed this at your August 24th meeting, and you approved the upgrades to the Broadway Generation Plant, and we discussed the relative benefit of issuing debt versus using cash. And as you will see, the interest rates were expected to be low, and that would ensure us using the 345 to build reserves, which does impact us if we need to issue debt throughout the next 5 years. So it keeps our reserve balance higher in the electric fund. So we sent out bids, and 6 bids, and posted on our website. And three of the banks, CCF, Bremer, and Bank of America, did not send in proposals. Pioneer Bank, Hometown Bank, and First National Bank, excuse me, they did send in proposals, and Pioneer Bank was the lowest proposal at a flat 1.5% interest each year over 5 years. So the total cost of issuing debt will be $360,525, of which $15,525 will be interest over the 5 years. Next was First National Bank, and their cost was $366,907.50, and then Hometown Bank was at $367,532. And again, you're buying $284,580 for a generator monitoring system and engine monitoring control panels up at the generation plant, and $60,390 for building automation upgrade. So I'm asking you to approve the resolution on page 27 and ending on page 32. Do you have any questions?
Questions for Sally? Steve Grams.
Sally, where is, the one bank, what's the name of that one? Bank of America, where is that?
They did the Amoresco lighting, so she had called in and said she wanted to do, so that's who we did it, so she asked that she be included on the bid packages when we send them out.
All right, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? Carrie?
For requests for proposals, is this really the only case where we send those directly? And I understand why we'd send them directly to the banks, but I guess I'm wondering about process or policy on that.
So, Mr. Mayor and members, it is a little bit hit and miss depending on the products that we're looking to receive proposals on, because we do know that some vendors are not watching us on a regular basis. And so when we have a regular business opportunity with those, we do try and include them as often as we can in areas where we think they might have interest. Beyond that, any request for proposal does go on our website, and so they are available to everyone. I will also tell you that we see now more and more and more that there are third-party entities that have search engines that are just scouring all the time. And so there are a number of businesses in our community and other communities that subscribe to some of those services, those CLIP services, that then forward them information as well. So I think in the future, this is going to continue to evolve more in that direction for those folks that are really out there looking to submit proposals on certain products, goods, services, or debt, as we see in this instance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Steve?
Todd, you mentioned third parties. Can you explain that again?
Yeah, so we have, and it's just not us, this is within every industry, or businesses that I would call aggregators. And so what they do is they have search engines that go out on the World Wide Web and search certain key terms or certain activities. And then they collect them all, and then they send them to businesses that subscribe to their service. And so we see that on a regular basis now. And I'm trying to think of a great example. So a great example of this might be Indeed or Monster.com. So some of you might know Monster.com is a company that provides advertising or promotes job openings. They have search engines that go out and look for job openings, and even though we might not post there, they grab our post off the website and they put it on theirs as their own and then push it back out. And so we have certain companies now that do that at that scale or at a more limited scale, and they might just be looking for road construction work or building construction work. And then they have businesses that subscribe to them, and then they go out and find the bids, the requests for proposals, etc., and forward it on to those businesses that subscribe to them.
Okay. Any other questions? The resolution awarding the sale of $345,000 Broadway Generation Plant Upgrade Equipment Certificates appears on pages 27 through 32. Is there a motion for approval?
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
All right, Carrie 1, Shannon 2. Any other questions at this point? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have a utility bill assistance program, and Sally.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, tonight we've put before you a resolution setting up a residential utility assistance program through the Minnesota Valley Action Council to help with city utilities customers to pay utility bills using the CARES funding of $50,000. The memo for explaining the program in detail is on pages 33 and 34 of the packet. As you know and we've discussed, the city has received $901,000 from federal funds to be used for expenditures incurred by the city due to COVID-19. One of the ways CARES funding can be utilized is to assist residential utility customers with bills incurred during the period of March 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. Most assistance programs only offer assistance on the electric portion of utility bills, but working with MVAC, the city is proposing to develop a plan that would assist with the payment of utility charges, including electric, water, wastewater, stormwater, environmental services, and refuse. So the full bill, utility bill. MVAC will administer the program following guidelines that can be found on the bottom of pages 33 and 34. There's a income eligibility. There's going to be a form that they need to sign that says, yes, I have been impacted by COVID-19, that they're signing and agreeing that that's what happened to them, whether they lost their job or took reduced hours or whatever that happens to be. But MVAC has all those guidelines, and they will be administering that for us. And then they will issue, they will call the city of St. Peter and say, we have guaranteed the payment of this bill, and then they will issue us a check back for the payment of that bill. And then they will keep a running total of the $50,000 between now and the end of the year. Again, it's between March and December 31st. So right now, there aren't a lot of customers are way behind, but we're seeing a few more come in now as it seems to be going on longer and longer. And like I said, Heat Share and some of these other winter programs do start taking effect come October and funding comes. But again, it does not cover the full utility bill. And water, wastewater, stormwater can accumulate over the few months. So we're trying to get everybody current and help them out there. So we are requesting the approval of the resolution on page 35, establishing a temporary COVID-19 utility assistance program for residential customers experiencing negative impact due to COVID-19. Questions?
Yeah, I'm going to ask one first here. Sally, you kind of alluded to it. There are other programs available that run along with this program also that people can use. So
Correct.
people that are watching, you just don't have to be affected because of COVID. You can go to MVAC and find other
Share
things.
and some other things, right.
That might want to help you out.
Yep.
Todd, can you reduce that so I can see? Any questions for Sally? Or comments?
Mr. Mayor, again.
Ed?
Are we seeing a higher amount of utility bills being in the negative than we did like last year?
We just did billing last week on Friday, and I just ran a thing, and surprisingly enough, we're at 6.5% past due on utility bills. Last year, we were at 7.5%. So we are hanging in there, which is very good news for us, but there are some that I know can use this program,
Okay.
so.
Steve?
Todd, did anyone, you or Sally, ask them how they came up with their rate of 45 an hour?
What?
No,
No, let me jump in on that one. We did not ask that, Steve, but we know that number previously from administering the housing program. And when Judd was here with that, they discussed that at that time. That's how they billed against that program. You might remember that as the housing rehab program. So we don't know the number is very similar to that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Carrie?
I had trouble understanding some of the eligibility criteria, so I just wanted to ask some questions about that. Must someone be in a crisis situation, and I know cold weather rule is going to take into effect, but must someone be past due in their payments or be in, must they be in that situation in order to qualify?
yes.
Okay. So then I guess that answers my next question. So, what happens if somebody in September loses their job? I know that they look back 3 months of income requirements, but it sounds like regardless, they'd have to be sort of in this past due danger area to qualify. Okay.
And that, if they lose their job in September or October, this goes to the end of December, so it would help them and we'd be able to look back and go that way.
Okay. And then, oh, sorry, go ahead, Todd.
Based on the amount of money that Sally's projected putting in here, frankly, I'm not really sure we might even use all this money up, especially as it dovetails with some of the other programs that the mayor talked about. And so we will see people that might qualify for heating assistance for their electric bill, but then use this program for their water and sewer bill later in the year. And so those programs will dove together, and that's how MVAC will continue to look at these.
So will the folks that are in past due status get a nudge, or do they just have to know that this?
We will put out, as they come in or they call to make payment arrangements or whatever that happens to be, if they contact us and say they're in trouble, we will tell them to contact MVAC. We also, when we send out delinquent notices to people, there is, a flyer, especially now with cold weather rule on October 15th going into effect. We do put in there Salvation Army, MVAC, the county, and everything else, and here are your numbers to call Heat Share.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? The resolution establishing temporary COVID-19 utility payment assistance appears on page 35. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily so moves.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Emily 1, Carrie 2. Any other questions or comments at this point? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Sally. Next up, we have the city assistance request for the haunted hayride. Todd.
Mayor, members, this is something that you've taken action on over the last couple of years with the Nicollet County Trails Association and providing this program at Riverside Park, or what sometimes we refer to as Mill Pond area. And so this is very similar to the requests that they've had in previous years, with really two primary exceptions. One of which is they are looking to extend their operational hours till midnight, which you approved last year and had no complaints. So this would be the second year of that. The other is that instead of having hay racks and people getting onto hay racks, and as there's been some comment before, they've done a very excellent job with that. This year, because of COVID, there won't be any hay racks, and so if you want to go through there with your family, you will take your family vehicle through. And so instead of being on the hay rack, you'll be in your car or your van or your SUV with your family and go through the area. So it'll be a little bit more condensed, but you're with your family. They've also done a very nice job, really frankly, a very nice job of having a COVID plan for all of their volunteers. And so while we didn't include that in the packet, that has been reviewed, and they really took some great care in making sure that that was planned. They're really looking to do this on 2 weekends, Mayor and members, the 15th and through the 17th, and the 23rd and the 24th of October. The resolution is included in your packet along with some additional information, and the resolution starts on page 40. We provide some cones and some miscellaneous other things for them, but they're pretty well self-contained, Mayor and members.
Questions? Steve?
Todd, it appears that they're going to remove those big boulders there by the mill pond. Is it dry enough back in there that people won't get stuck?
So that's been a point of discussion and will continue to be a point of discussion. So it is unlikely that that will be utilized, but it might depend on the weather and then the traffic pattern that they could establish. So while we're not against that, I think the likelihood, and we talked about this at staff meeting today, and Pete asked that same question, I think that it's doubtful that they'll use that area. They'll put cars around on what we would call the mill pond, the ring road that's there will be the primary area.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Shannon?
I just want to say my experience with this event is that it's just a great event. It's fun to be able to bring something like this to the council that gives a little bit of fun and normalcy to people in St. Peter during these difficult times. And I really, really greatly appreciate their attention to safety and COVID. So I'm personally really excited about this.
Carrie?
Just a quick question on the timeline that I think they submitted, and this is on page 39. So the event looks like it ends at 11, so that 11 to midnight is for cleanup, or is that old information?
So that is, I think, old information, but the request within their letter does say midnight.
Midnight, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? The resolution approving the request for city assistance for Nicollet County Trails Association Haunted Hayrides appears on pages 40 and 41. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Noel will second.
Steve 1, Shannon 2. Any other questions or comments at this point? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, we have the North Traverse Green Subdivision Preliminary Plat. And we have Russ.
Yeah, Mayor Zeman, members of the City Council, you're asked to consider the platting of what's currently legally identified as Outlot D of Traverse Green Subdivision. The property is zoned R3 multifamily development and lies west of Nicollet Avenue or CASA 20 and north of Clark Street, as was platted in the first phase of of Traverse Green Subdivision. The preliminary plat is shown in your packet as page 45. The preliminary plat would show the platting of 6 twin home lots, 12 single-family lots, 2 multifamily lots. It would identify what is expected to be the future Cullen Street right-of-way. I would mention that anything lying west of Block 1 would be considered to be speculative or tentative. As you will see on the final plats, they are included as future outlots. A preliminary plat has a shelf life of 12 months, and as I explained at the last workshop, the subdivision ordinance states that approval of the preliminary plat shall be effective for a period of 1 year unless an extension is granted by the City Council. The subdivider may file a final plat limited to such portion of the preliminary plat as he or she proposes to record and develop at that time, provided that such portion conforms to the requirements of this chapter. The preliminary plat, as I mentioned, shows the future Cullen Street right-of-way running north and south on the western edge of the preliminary plat. That would be an extension of Cullen Street as it would extend from the first phase of Traverse Green subdivision. Mr. Mayor, I'd answer any questions that you and the council may have. I will note that the Planning Commission has recommended your acceptance of the preliminary plat as submitted.
Okay. Questions for Russ? All right, we've been over this a few times. If there's no question, the resolution approving the preliminary plat of North Traverse Green subdivision appears on page 47. And if you will go to paragraph 3, after whereas, comma, the, insert city into that resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I think Russ has one other item that he wants to point
Go ahead,
out.
Russ.
Yeah, I need to apologize. I also found a typo in paragraph 5. It says, whereas the city would retain ownership of the lands identified as lying west of the easterly line of the future, it should say Cullen Street. Clark Street is the east-west road. Cullen Street then is the north-south road, and I apologize for that error, but I'm glad we caught it.
All right. All right, with those two changes, with the resolution, it appears on page 47. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed'll make a motion to approve.
Carrie
Noel
Johnson
will
will second.
All right, Ed 1, Carrie 2. Any other questions or comment at this time? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye. Resolution is approved. Next, we have a resolution for approving the final plat. Russ.
Yeah, Mayor Zeman, members of the council, the final plat is shown on page 46 of your agenda packet. You will note that the final plat is an abbreviated portion, and it's upside down there. It's an abbreviated portion of the preliminary plat as expected. The final plat would show the location of 3 twin home lots, or a total of 6 lots, abutting the north right-of-way of future Clark Street. And then it would include 1 multifamily lot identified as Lot 1, Block 1. You will notice, as it appears on the screen, it's like an L-shaped easement that would extend from Clark Street. That would accommodate the future utilities as determined by the Public Works Department. Mr. Mayor, I will note that the plat meets all of the requirements and standards of the subdivision agreement. All of the lots will conform to the minimum requirements of the R3 multi-family zoning district, and the plat meets all of the adopted utility standards. Once again, the Planning Commission has recommended City Council approval of the final plat as petitioned.
All right. Questions for Russ on the final plat? If not, the resolution approving the final plat of North Traverse Green subdivision appears on page 49. Is there a motion for approval?
Emily so moves.
Ed'll second.
Emily 1, Ed 2. Any questions now? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Thank you, Russ. Next up,
Thank
we
you.
have the North 3rd McLeod Center Street Project Feasibility Study Acceptance. Pete.
Mayor Zeman and City Council, in August, you authorized our city engineer to complete a feasibility report and to report that back to the council. What we're going to do tonight is Jeff Domras is going to tell you the findings of his report, and upon completion, we will talk to you about the next 5 steps going forward as we discuss this project. Jeff, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Pete. Good evening, Mayor and council members. North 3rd Street, Center and McLeod are part of a handful of streets here in the city of St. Peter that currently contain a gravel surface. Gravel roadways are subject to frequent flooding, potholing, washboarding, dust, erosion issues. Over the last 2 years, residents have expressed concerns regarding that roadway condition and drainage. Those are two big issues down there. City has met with residents to determine their interest in improving the road, and by doing this, assessing the cost of the benefiting properties per the city assessment policy. So Minnesota Statute 429 does allow improvement costs to be assessed to benefiting properties. Series of steps are involved there. The first being, as Pete mentioned, was ordering the preparation of this report. So I'll review this report with you, and then, as Pete mentioned, go through the next steps. So the purpose of the report is to present the preliminary investigations and discoveries, design considerations, and cost estimates for determining the feasibility of utility and street improvements. This is for North 3rd Street, north of St. Julian Street, and also McLeod and Center Streets. Those are also parts of the project. Existing street conditions, North Third is basically a combination of fog seals, bituminous patches, a little bit of gravel on the very north end. Center Street is gravel, and Cloud Street is also gravel. As Todd's got on the screen there, just a summary of each street section. Existing street width on North Third is about 20 to 24 feet. There isn't any curb and gutter or sidewalk along any of these segments of roadway. Center Street's about 20 feet wide, and that's also aggregate. And then McLeod Street is aggregate also, and only 16 feet wide. So, and then on the very north end of the project, although it's platted as a cul-de-sac, the north end of North Third Street does not provide any adequate roadway surface for maintenance or emergency vehicle turnaround. Same can be said for the dead end on the west end of McLeod Street. So for the surface improvements, those that are proposed include new curb and gutter, new bituminous pavement. Sidewalk is not proposed as part of the improvements simply because of low volume roadway. Third Street, we're looking at 30-foot wide roadway, which is wide enough to allow parking on one side and then still allow two-way traffic on that roadway. As part of the improvements, I'll get into it a little bit later, 80-foot cul-de-sac is proposed on the very north end. That is currently platted that way, so we are proposing to actually complete that at this time. We'll reference figure 3 there quite a bit. So, and then for roadway improvement, Center Street, we're proposing basically repurposing that, as you can see on the drawing, for stormwater purposes. And then McLeod Street from North Third to the west, new curb and gutter, new pavement. This would be about, I think it's 24-foot wide is what we're proposing there. So two 12-foot lanes, basically to allow two-way traffic. Utility improvements are shown there in figure number 3. Todd has up on the screen. Currently, we got sanitary sewer, 8-inch sanitary sewer in St. Julian Street in North 3rd Street from St. Julian to McLeod. There's also 6-inch water main in there. Both were believed to be constructed in 1975 in that era. McLeod Street, both sanitary and water were stubbed to the west from North 3rd Street in about 1995. And that's PVC sanitary sewer and also believed to be ductile iron water main there. So there is no sanitary sewer currently existing north of McLeod Street. So there's currently only 2 homes there you can see in the drawing that are serviced or that have service from North 3rd, and they basically, I believe, come from the existing utilities to the south. So as part of the improvements, we are proposing to construct new sanitary sewer all the way to the north into that cul-de-sac to provide sanitary sewer service to those lots that are on the very north end of the cul-de-sac. Water main, the same thing is proposed for water main. We're not proposing to replace any water main that's in place now. Like the sanitary sewer, I didn't mention that earlier. Sanitary sewer was determined to be in good condition, and if needed in the future, it could be easily lined or feasibly lined without a lot of costs there. Water main, 6-inch water main is proposed. That currently, like the sanitary sewer, water main currently ends at McLeod Street. So water main is proposed, a new 6-inch water main is proposed from McLeod to the north into that cul-de-sac. That again would provide for water services to the lots on the very north end. And then we've got a hydrant also proposed there for fire protection. The hydrant that you're seeing is not necessarily where it would go, but it's more pictorial than anything at this point. But just to give you an idea, that's what's proposed for water main improvements. As part of the water main improvements, it would include 1-inch copper water services to those lots on the very north end. Storm sewer. Let's see, there's only very little storm sewer in this area, and that was one of the things I noted early on was a lot of drainage concern here. Not a lot of drainage or adequate drainage in this area. Ultimately, everything likes to drain from the west to the east without any storm sewer picking it up. It's ponding in the roadway. During heavier rains, it overtops and ultimately goes down property lines, that sort of thing. But right now, the only 2 storm sewer inlets are those on the very south end at St. Julian Street. See the storm sewer main line, we're proposing to construct new storm sewer in there. Those that's shown there in the orange, that would propose to extend all the way to the north to pick up the cul-de-sac there, and ultimately discharge to the detention pond that's proposed in Center Street. As part of this improvement, 15-inch storm sewer pipe is proposed, at least at this time, it's proposed to be extended to the Alumacraft site to handle their stormwater drainage. As many of you probably noted in the report, there's about I think about 13-acre watershed here that's contributing to this system. About 50% of that is from Alumacraft. And so if Alumacraft is able to construct a pond on their site, which the city's been working with them to achieve, our pond that we've shown there in Center Street would be adequate. If Alumacraft chose not to construct a basin on their site, it would mean we'd have to look at a different location for this pond. But I know, it's my understanding, it's Alumacraft's intent to construct a basin on their site simply because they will be potentially doing future improvements there. So storm sewer design includes catch basins and then the storm sewer manholes. It's a 10-year design, which is typical. Prior to getting into the costs, then I'm just going to touch on the city's assessment policy. Currently, the city's assessment policy notes that all sanitary sewer, water main services, water services, sanitary sewer services are based on are assessed at 100%. This also applies to curb and gutter and sidewalk. So currently there is no curb and gutter, and that is assessed so that would be assessed at 100%. Any new water main improvements, sanitary sewer improvements, service improvements also would be assessed to 100% of the benefiting properties. So this would be those properties on the very north end, since the rest of that sanitary sewer water main on North 3rd isn't proposed to be replaced. Storm sewer costs are assessed based on the drainage area contributing to the storm sewer improvements. And the city is responsible for the storm sewer costs within the roadway right away. Street construction, the way the city assessment policy reads is street construction costs are based on frontage, in which 30% of those costs would be assessed to the benefiting properties, and the remaining 70% would be the responsibility of the city. So as Todd's got on the project cost estimates there, the portion for street improvements are in the top line. The estimate of cost to be assessed would be about $64,000. Estimated city cost of the street would be about $182,000 or $183,000. It's not a straight 30 to 70 simply because the city's cost includes intersections also. So that's why the city's cost is a little bit more than 70% of the overall total cost for street and surface improvements, which is $246,700. Curb and gutter, that same thing applies there. Accessible would be about $60,000. The city's share about $9,500, and that's of course in intersections just like this. The surface improvements total for curb and gutter improvements would be about $69,000. Driveway aprons are assessed 100%. You could see those there. I did not mention that during when I talked about the street improvements, but even though sidewalk improvements aren't being proposed, driveway apron improvements are. So driveway aprons would be constructed to would be constructed from the curb to the property line at each one of the homes that has access on North 3rd and McLeod Street. And then sanitary sewer and water services, those would be assessed at 100%. Those are the costs for that sanitary sewer extension on the very north end of the project. Storm sewer, that is total cost of $206,700. The city share of that would be that portion that's within roadway or street intersections. So overall total project cost, including engineering, administration, legal, and financing, is about $652,000. The breakdown is there on the screen for each one of those portions of the improvement. Pete, do you want me to talk a little bit about the schedule then, or is that something you want to discuss? Or?
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, so the proposed project schedule, as Pete mentioned, the City Council did authorize the feasibility study here at the August 24th meeting. And then the feasibility report has been completed. And then so what the City Council would ultimately consider tonight would be accepting the feasibility report, after questions, and if everything's satisfactory to the council. If you chose to accept the feasibility report, an improvement hearing would be held. Right now, if the City Council does choose to accept the report and move ahead with the improvement hearing, we've got that tentatively scheduled for October 26th. The City Council can reject the proposed project at the improvement hearing, if they want. They can also choose to adjourn and continue the hearing if they want. But ultimately, you have about 6 months after the improvement hearing to order the improvements be completed. That means that the plans inspector would have to be prepared and then bidding would have to occur. But you have up to 6 months to do that. That would be after the improvement hearing. What the improvement hearing allows is the discussion of the improvements. It's basically similar to what we're doing here, but the public, those that would be impacted by assessments, would be invited. They would be sent out a notice of the hearing, and then it would also be advertised in the newspaper. So then persons that wish to be heard regarding the proposed improvements or ask any questions, they could come and do that at that improvement hearing. So that's kind of a quick run through of the proposed project and the feasibility. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Pete, did you have anything to add before we go out for questions?
No, Jeff covered it pretty well.
All right. Very good. Questions for Jeff, Pete? Steve?
Jeff, what's the current width of the main feeder in St. Peter, like Washington, and the side street? What's the width of the street?
Our street widths vary. It all depends on what kind of traffic they carry. So a collector road, as an example, like Washington Avenue, is, I believe, 44 feet or 40 feet wide. That's from face to curb to face to curb. Normally, our residential streets are 36 foot wide face to face. So here we're looking at 30 foot in this situation. Traverse Green, I know we're gone with the 30 foot face to face also in Traverse Green. So North 3rd would be very similar to what you see for roadway widths in Traverse Green subdivision.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jeff, for your presentation. My question is on page 57 of the packet, and it's the second paragraph from the top, and it talks about that you've inspected the sanitary sewer on North 3rd Street and it's in good condition. It doesn't need to be replaced, but if pipe joints begin to leak, lining the pipe would be a cost-effective solution. I guess my question is, if we're already doing work, would it be a good idea to do something like that and head off any issues, or just leave it the way it is and wait for the issue before we address it? I guess that's my question.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer that, Pete, or do you want to, or?
I can handle that one. When we look at the sanitary sewer before we put a street on it, Emily, our main concerns are, is it structurally intact? What's the cheapest methods for maintenance? As Jeff had mentioned, it all looks good. We're happy with the age that it is right now. If we do find joints that are leaking, instead of lining the whole whole area, we might be able to go in and just grout 2 or 3 joints. And so we could really reduce the cost by doing that. As long as the structure is good, there's a lot of maintenance that we can do from inside the manholes and the pipe.
Great, thanks. That helps clarify. I appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone else? Shannon?
Thank you very much. I have 2 questions. My first is a question about the properties. It looks like between, on page 65, lot 131 and 1321 and 1331, is that a vacant lot, or does it belong to one of those 2 properties?
That's a good question. I believe that is owned by 1331. I believe that's part of that lot.
Okay, I was just kind of, it is, okay, thanks. I was kind of wondering how that would be assessed, or if it was completely unrelated. My second.
Go ahead, but the gentleman that owns that has been a proponent of the project, and he has got 2 properties there.
Gotcha. My second question was about McLeod Street, and it's noted in the report, which thank you very much. The report was very useful. It says the current right-of-way does not allow adequate room for construction of a cul-de-sac on McLeod Street. So is that, I'm assuming a cul-de-sac is more expensive. Is that just a matter of cost effectiveness? Like we couldn't afford to do that really? Or would it be a matter of dealing with property owners down there to try to find out if they were okay with giving up some space to accommodate that? I was just thinking about the logistics of maintaining it and sending garbage trucks and snow plows and things like that down that street, if a cul-de-sac would make that easier.
It's really a matter of space there, Shannon. If you look at the picture there, we don't have the right of way. Probably at one time, McLeod was intended to be a through street. And so you see at the west end of that street there, there's really low traffic and low space for that. If you look at the cul-de-sac layout, you see that we have about 100 foot of right of way that we own, and here you're probably really limited to about 60. So we'd have to obtain property in order for that to be installed.
Yeah, that's kind of how I was looking at it. I just didn't know if that was a possibility at all, if we had done that in other areas of town or not. But I think you answered my question.
We have a few areas in town where we have a similar, if not identical, situations on Minnesota Avenue where those cross streets have been cut off and they are basically dead-ended to Minnesota Avenue. And it's the same struggle there, I'm sure, for all of these utility vehicles and everything else to turn around. So it's not unusual. It's not the ideal, but it's not unusual. But if you go down Minnesota Avenue, you can see the ones that have been discontinued access to 169 or Minnesota Avenue. Anyone else have any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Pete, what percentage are we at for approval and disapproval of this for the homeowners?
I guess what I would term it just a little differently, Ed, and that would be is we've had 5 residents that have said they're not interested in paying for the improvement. Nobody has said they don't like the project, they're just not really interested in paying for it. But we do have a majority of the properties down there that have signed waivers of assessment and are waiting to hear back from us in favor of the project.
Okay, thank you.
If we approve this and go ahead with the public hearing at that time, will we have preliminary estimates per owner as far as their cost, their assessment cost? Okay, all right. I know we've given them some rough ideas before, but I mean to get them down to what we were talking about. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none at this point, the resolution accepting a feasibility report and calling for public hearing on improvements to North 3rd Street, Center, and McLeod Streets from West Julian to 1,000 feet north appears on pages 71 and 72. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Noel seconds.
Okay, we got Steve 1 and Shannon 2. Any more questions at this point? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. Next up, that concludes our new business. Thanks, Pete and Jeff. Next up, we have reports. Don't have a thing to add, Todd, so it's all up to you.
Mr. Mayor, members, as you know, is customary since sometime at the beginning of April, I provide a small COVID-19 update report. Could go through a list as long as my arm, but let me stick to 1 or 2 items. As you know, we continue to practice social distancing and to provide for masks as required under the governor's orders. Probably the most significant change or modification that we've seen to utilization of facilities is going to come actually from today moving forward here at the community center. And this is for open gym time. We have had a massive use of open gym time here. And as you know, under the rules, we have to restrict the number of participants. And so going forward from today, we will be modifying and St. Peter residents get dibs on utilization. We've had a lot of folks from outside of St. Peter looking to utilize the gym facilities. And when we reach a maximum number of folks, then we can't allow anyone more. And so now we're restricting it to St. Peter and school district residents, not folks from Fairmont or Mankato or Belle Plaine or wherever. So just to make you aware of that. We might get some calls about that, but with the numbers being limited, it seems the most appropriate to make sure that your local residents who help pay the cost to maintain the facility have opportunity to use it. So that's probably the biggest thing related to COVID-19. I do want to mention Night to Unite event on October 6th. This will be the second year, sort of having neighborhood gatherings. So technically it will be the second year, but the neighborhood gatherings are going to be modified due to COVID. And so typically these are events that are held within neighborhoods and are on driveways and other areas. We do have one organizing neighborhood that is asked to close off a portion of the street, so we'll help them and provide opportunity to provide that if they want to continue to go forward with that. But that's a wonderful event within our community, Night to Unite, supporting emergency services, police department, just a great opportunity for neighbors to get to know each other. Typically there's some food and other activities that are promoted and supported by the committee that puts that event together. I also want to provide an update on hospital financing. As some of you may recall, you passed a resolution or actually a series of actions at your last council meeting providing for financing of the hospital addition over $30 million plus, as you may recall. That was supposed to close, well, now, and we have actually moved that closing back to October 8th, and that moving it back has modified the interest rate. So we're going from an interest rate that was at 2.25 down to 2.125. And as you may recall, the original estimate on this project was an interest rate of something over 7.7 to 7.75%. So some substantial savings. Just the change from moving it a little bit over a week from the end of September to that start of the second week of October is going to save about $900,000 over the term on debt service. And so that's fantastic, and wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. There's no additional action that's needed on your part, or the part of the commission. The resolutions were written so as a not to exceed number, so we can make this go, and USDA has approved this modification as well. And again, I think, although you can't see it under my mask, I think I'm smiling because we're happy to save the money, right? And so it's wonderful that we can do that. Just a couple other items, if I may, Mr. Mayor. One of which is hydrant flushing is going to start October 5th, and that starts at 8 at night until 6 in the morning, so overnight hours. So Pete's crew works on that diligently, and so we'll see. Typically, we have about a week scheduled, but last year they were able to accomplish it a little bit faster than that. They're really Johnny on the spot with that, so I wanted to mention that one. And then I also want to mention that we have on October 10th a couple of different activities that are going on related to tire recycling, appliance recycling, electronics recycling that are going to occur on October 10th from 9 in the morning until 1 in the afternoon at the wastewater treatment plant parking lot. So we want to really encourage folks to make use of that. I think it's also hazardous materials, right, Sally?
No, you're at the fairgrounds on the 10th.
Oh, thank you.
And then hazardous material is the 17th. That's Lake Road hazardous waste.
And that's at the wastewater treatment plant. So the 10th is at the fairgrounds, and the 17th is at the wastewater treatment plant for hazardous materials. So tires at the fairground, electronics at the fairground on the 10th, and paint, insecticides, that kind of stuff at the wastewater treatment plant on the 17th.
Fluorescent bulbs too, I believe.
Yep. So watch for your utility flyer. It's going to be in your utility flyer this week as it comes to your home or your business. And so all the directions and how that all works is all listed out in there very nicely for folks to see.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's all that I have, except for requesting an executive session. And there's a resolution that's included in your packet for this, and this is for a proposed or possible land transfer, sale of land at 216 South Washington Avenue is the location that we may be considering. Mayor and members, I don't have any other resolutions, but I will mention that it is not my intent for you to come back to take action on this matter, only to come back into open session to adjourn.
All right. Before we ask for that, calling for the closed session, we will, I will check to see if anybody has anything they'd like to add or share or questions before we, as we usually do at the end, but we'll do it right now. If no one has anything, the resolution calling for closed session to discuss possible sale of city-owned property at 216 South Washington Avenue appears on page 73. Is there a motion for approval?
Ed will make a motion to approve.
Emily will second.
Ed 1, Emily 2. Any questions on this procedure? Call the roll, please, Barb.
Councilmember Grams.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Mayor Zeman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Resolution is approved. We will now recess into closed session.